Hey, what's happening, guys? Dan Darrow here with another Options to Play video update. So, wrapping up one week and looking ahead to the next week, right? So, earnings on the radar. Uh, and these next few reports are going to be a little bit more unusual or a little bit different setup than much of what we've seen for 2009 up to this point, right? Because this past week, volatility started to wake up a little bit. Averages pulled back, so starting to see a little bit more two-way action overall, which prior to this week really we hadn't seen since late December. So this next wave of earnings are going to be met with maybe a little bit more volatility, and that's good. That means opportunity, right? And I feel like oftentimes when the first wave of volatility comes, options don't really react enough to compensate for it. So there could be some more underpriced options, especially if the volatility keeps or remains slightly elevated or even increases further from here. So anyway, without further ado, so Monday is as Monday typically is, meaning that Monday morning is really pretty slow. Nothing, nothing is actually even scheduled for Monday before the open. Um, so after the close, so we'll just skip straight to after the close, and Stitch Fix definitely one I'll be watching. So it's pricing in about 4.5 points. Traded this one the last few quarters actually, and overall I feel like it's one of the more interesting setups next week. Typically a pretty big mover. So here, and then back here, right? So June they ignited the move. October erased the move, and then December, December is just more of the volatile nature here. Um, but not even counting this massive drop in October, right? The stock has been a pretty big mover. I mean, just last quarter when it was almost in the exact same setup at the exact same price, it moved over 7.5 points. So pricing in 4.5 points, moved 7.5 points last quarter from a nearly identical price point, nearly identical setup. So I'm thinking like the same strategy again. I mean, this thing is heavily shorted, kind of just underneath like key resistance with a big gap above. I mean, it traded all the way down to like the 18 level after earnings last quarter. So I'm thinking a strangle because the options don't seem to be pricing in the average or what this thing has averaged in the past, and it's a very similar setup to what it was in December, and that moved, 7.5. So I like the idea of a strangle on Stitch Fix. Also, Monday after the close, Coupa. So was a high flying software stock is pulled back a little bit ahead of earnings. Still priced in at 11 points though, so a pretty big price to move here. It's very similar to what Okta was like going into earnings. So the thing with Okta is like traders weren't really in the mood to chase that thing higher, and this Coupa seems like a very similar setup. So personally, I'm thinking I'll probably avoid this unless there's maybe like another major leg lower ahead of earnings. But that only really gives like Monday during the day. So right now I'm thinking no. But we'll see how Monday looks, and then maybe reevaluate from there. All right, on to Tuesday. One of the more interesting ones, Dix. So it's priced in at 4 points, and this one's been a little bit less volatile the past few quarters. I mean, it has in the past had some really wild moves, but the last couple quarters it's been tightening up a bit. What's interesting is that it's hanging just underneath like this long-term area of resistance at 40, right? And kind of a similar setup to what Foot Locker was. I'll draw this. So Foot Locker, you can see very similar, right? It was pushed up into like the 60 area, and that had a big breakout. So Dick's pushing up into this 40 area, similar setup. Could have like a nice breakout and push to retest like this gap back in June 2017. So I'm thinking bullish. I mean, like the numbers have been okay. They haven't been spectacular, but some of the athletic apparel names have been better. Foot Locker's numbers were pretty solid, and that should translate a little bit to Dick's. Obviously, Dick's has more sporting goods, but I like the idea of a bullish trade here, looking for a potential like pent up breakout. Um, so that's definitely one I have circled for next week. That's Tuesday before the open. Also that morning, Momo. So the Chinese names have been a little bit better recently. A lot of them have kind of woken up, either turning the corner or woken up out of like some consolidations. Uh, uh, this is priced in at 4.5 points, so a little bit bigger move, and especially for like a $32 stock. But um, it's kind of like a not exactly the same as YY, but there are some similarities in YY at a nice push quickly up to the 200-day. So with Momo down in like the low 30s, I feel like maybe if the numbers look good, maybe you get like that quick move up into the 200-day, similar to some of these other China names. Um, right now. Right now it's 4.5. I mean, that's kind of puts it up into the 37.50 area. So options are a little bit on the more expensive side. So I guess if I did end up going with this, it would probably have to be some sort of spread, just to get the debit down a bit. But I mean, ideally, like if did a bullish trade, it would probably be targeting a move up into this 200 area right here. All right. After the close Tuesday switch. So this is one we've played in the past. And pretty amazing how consistent this thing has been. I mean, it just rallies into like this trend, right? I mean, it's unbelievable how consistent this has been. It just rallies into this trend and into earnings and just gets like smacked down off of it. This thing has been easily one of like the biggest disappointers when it reports. I mean, nonstop, just miss and guide lower, miss and guide lower. So uh, I've played this one a bunch of quarters in the past, and I guess this time around I don't love it as much. I feel like the downside at these prices might be a little bit more limited. So even though I've had success with this one previously, I guess probably thinking of leaving it alone just because I don't love the setup as much this quarter, even though it has rebounded into the top of its trend. I mean, from here there might not be that much downside from the current prices. So um, I'll probably leave that one alone. All right, Wednesday morning before the open, Vera Bradley. So it's typically a volatile retailer. They haven't guided holiday sales yet, so thinking that it should be pretty volatile, right? So there's been some big moves in this one in the past. There's been some big moves, as you can see in the past. Last quarter wasn't a huge move, but it's basically erased all the losses from last quarter. It's hanging right around the 10 level. Um, decent consolidation, kind of like grind, like kind of hanging out in a tighter range going into earnings here. Uh, it's pricing in about $1.15 or so a little over $1. I feel like there's maybe visibility for like a $2 to $3 move either way. Right? So if it gets up, maybe you get a move up into this 200-day. If it disappoints, maybe you get a retest of the low down around 8. So it's pricing in a little over $1, but there seems like there could be visibility for maybe like a 2 to 3 either way. So maybe straddle on that one. Do a lot of strangles, but this one seems like it might be a nice straddle candidate. After the close Wednesday, Cloudera. So this one we've traded in the past, and the merger with Hortonworks closed, so HDP. So this is going to be a key quarter. It's priced in at 2 points, which is not too bad. I mean, it has had some moves in excess of that. Just back in September when it reported, it moved about 3.5. So 2 points. Last quarter it was above that. It's hanging. Maybe not like the best area. It's kind of like chopping around. It's 200-day, but if the numbers are good, maybe place catch up to the software stocks. Integrating HDP. Maybe if they can put together a decent report, that there could be some catch up. Because this is obviously off its October high, and it's way off. Way off its 52-week high. So plenty of room higher, but the numbers are gonna have to look pretty good. So I feel like if anything, maybe like a bullish, longer term out of the money trade, right? Just to see if they can put something good together here. Maybe momentum gets going and it can start to play catch up pretty quick, maybe up into like that 20 area. So I'm thinking maybe something bullish, but also like longer term. Williams Sonoma is tentatively scheduled for Wednesday afternoon, um, but they haven't confirmed yet. So I'll be keeping an eye out for a press release, and then we can circle back and reevaluate at the time. But tentatively for Wednesday, but not yet confirmed. All right, on to Thursday. Before the Open, actually, there's really no major name, surprisingly. Smaller China name, BitAuto, but they haven't confirmed, and a smaller retailer, Genesco. Um, but chart you can see nothing special. Kind of choppy. Um, Occasionally it has a big move, but right now it doesn't seem like it's in like a super compelling price point. So I think I'll probably just end up leaving that one alone. Thursday after the close is a big tech night. So Thursday morning, really not much. Thursday night, pretty big night. So first things first, Adobe, one of the big cloud names. So it's pricing in 14 points, and this is market cap wise the second biggest report of the week. So this was flagging really nicely above 260 coming into this week, and then obviously the market pulled back, software stocks pulled back, so it's kind of rolled over into like the low 250s now. Um, you know, Overall, it's still hanging near the top of resistance, and it's coming off a few strong quarters in a row. So I really like the overall setup still, but thinking that market sentiment may play a bigger role in the type of action you see, kind of like Salesforce, right? If the market's still under some pressure and people are taking money, are cutting risk and taking money off the table, it might be a little bit more challenging to get rewarded on a setup like this. But I really feel like it's like hard not to like the bullish scenario. I mean, it's had a string of really strong quarters hanging out right above, right near the top of resistance. Seems like if they can put together a good move, then you get this really obvious target up in like the high 270s. So it's priced in at 14 points. Seems to be visibility for greater than a 20-point move from these prices. Um, so the current call spread goes out through next week. And depending on how like the next few days go, we're gonna have to decide whether to hold, cut risk, or roll. But it's probably going to depend a lot on like the action leading up to the report. A lot can change between now and Thursday afternoon, right? Also, okay, so this is market cap wise the biggest report of the week. Broadcom pricing in 15 points. So Adobe was 14, Broadcom's 15. So it's rolled off its high, but overall, I mean, easily one of the better like semis. I mean, it at one point had just about gotten up to retest the high from 2017. Really, really impressive. Coming off a good quarter back in December here. Surprisingly, it's flying under the radar a little bit. I mean, for the magnitude of the company, I feel like a lot of people don't really pay attention to it much, and it's been performing really, really well. I mean, it is technically within striking distance of like all-time highs too. So I don't know. It's coming off a decent number. The stock's been acting pretty strong. It's just off its 52-week high. I feel like it doesn't get a lot of attention. Yeah, I kind of like the bullish scenario, but it's tough not to think that something that's right at 52-week high might be a little bit tougher to get paid on, especially if things remain weak for the next few days. So maybe like a calendar spread on this one, especially because it hasn't been as volatile in earnings. I mean, 15 points is not a huge priced in move, but for something that's close to a 52-week high, it might be a little bit tough. So I'm thinking maybe like a calendar spread, so like sell like near-term premium to like offset a longer-term position, thinking that if numbers are decent, snaps back, and then maybe continues to like grind higher into like new highs. My charts are so slow. So Alta also Thursday after the close. This one's priced in at 24 points, so pretty big priced in move here. This thing was smashed on earnings back in December, and it's obviously recovered all of that and then some. What's also interesting is that it's basically just like pushing up into just all-time high up around right around like 310, right? So you can see like this will be like the third test of it. So really obvious area of resistance above. It dropped. So really obvious area of resistance above. A pent up breakout, right, should put it. A 10% measured move through like 310 to 315 puts it in the 340s to possibly 350 area. And it dropped 40 points last quarter after disappointing. Um, so it seems like there could be like a $30 to $40 move either way. I mean, it moved 40 last quarter. It's right at the top of its couple-year high, so it's kind of an interesting setup actually. Thinking strangle, but because it's a little bit more expensive, the options are a little bit more expensive. It would have to be probably spreads either direction. So I'm definitely have Alta Circle. It's one of the more interesting setups next week. Um, but because options are on the more expensive side, probably would be spreads either way. All right, DocuSign, another name. This is also Thursday after the close. So kind of like a similar setup to a lot of these software stocks recently, right? Just been kind of grinding, grinding, grinding. It's priced in at 4.5 points. But it's up a lot in a short period of time, and these types of setups have been a little bit tougher to get paid on recently, right? Like these software names that have really had these huge runs into earnings haven't really extended. A lot of times they've sold off. Not to mention, DocuSign actually has a history of reacting pretty weak to earnings. So, to me, thinking either avoid or bearish bet on it because software stocks and similar setups have tended to respond, flat to weak. DocuSign has a history of selling off on earnings, and this thing is in need of like a pullback or a pause. So I'm thinking either avoid or bearish bet on this one. All right, and wrapping it up on Friday, not really anything major. Hibbett is tentatively scheduled to report, but they haven't confirmed yet either. So, again, I'll be watching for a press release confirming that. But this one has had some huge moves. What's interesting is that Dix will be earlier in the week, so this might have a big move. Even if they don't release earnings on Friday, this might have a big move anyway because of the Dix report. So that could be a pretty good sympathy trade, especially if they confirm earnings, after March 15th expiration, then the next week's contracts will probably lose like a fair amount of implied volatility, and then you could get maybe like a decent trade, decent sympathy trade on the Dix report. So I'll keep an eye on it, but as of right now, they haven't confirmed whether they're reporting or not. All right, so that's that. So as you can see, not as many big names, but the ones that are reporting are mostly pretty interesting, and some typically volatile movers. So what I like to say is that even though they're on a day-to-day basis, there may be not as many names reporting. The ones that are reporting will actually tend to maybe be even more volatile because traders, instead of having like 30 to 50 names to look at, right now they're only looking at maybe like 5 to 10, or even maybe like 2 to 5. So like as more people focus on a few names, then I feel like the moves end up being a little bit more exaggerated sometimes. So that's why it's like, yes, maybe not as many, but the action could end up actually being better. So still plenty to look forward to. All right, guys. As always, I'd love to hear from you. Questions or comments. What do you think about the setups this week? What do you think about the setups this past week? Had our first sign of volatility, and now we're starting to see some two-way action again. So let me know. Let me know what you guys think, or your thoughts, or if you have any questions. All right, so please reach out. Hope you have a great weekend, and I'll talk to you guys all on Monday.